Hello, this is Max Drake. I'd like to talk to you about this little device here and using it as a productivity tool. Now, this is a Stream Deck. Now, initially it's a peripheral that you just plug into your computer directly, and it's got a whole load of buttons through here. So the one that I've actually got, it comes in several flavors, which I'll talk about briefly in a little while. This one has a row of 5 along the top and 3 down, so it's got a total of 15 buttons. But what you can do with that button is that you can actually have a whole load of other buttons. So if you create another folder or another profile, you've got another 15 buttons. Well, in fact, you've got 14 because that up arrow takes you to the folder above in a way. But if I just go back into and I just touch that folder again, I can drag a hotkey across into here as an action. And then if you actually just rest on there, and I can assign something like... it's laggy as well. If I assign Windows D attached to that, it's not quite doing it here. It'll assign that key to that button. So if I touch that button, it's the same as if I typed Control D, and it would do that action. I can also go to a specific website. So I can put a URL against that website and go across to that. I can have a hotkey toggle. So maybe I have a sound up or a sound down or a sound mute, and then the sound come back to what it was before. So you can have 2 hotkeys there, the hotkey to mute and then the hotkey to unmute or something like that. So that's a similar thing. Because they're backlit, what you can actually do is you can assign an icon. So if we go up, you'll see these icons or the images that you can actually assign. So you can take a screenshot of the logo of Firefox or of things here, or a picture of something that gives you an association with it. And as long as it's squares, so 16 pixels by 16 pixels or 300 pixels by 305 pixels, it'll actually act as a background image. So yeah, that's very good and easy for identifying stuff. Now you can do folders such that you can have multiple things in there. You can have profiles, so you can have that's equivalent to another folder. But what this does is it associates it with a specific program. So if you actually open up that program, so something like if I open up my browser, it will go to my browser button and whatever one I've assigned to that, and it'll come up with all of those buttons. So if I'm in my browser and I have that up there, and I'm just going to pop this up in front of it, if I press this one here, it's going to go to a new site stuff that I go to. I can go to this one here. So straight away I can just press the button. So instead of actually coming up inside the browser and coming up to either the address bar or coming in and finding the bookmark for it, I can actually just press that button and it takes me to the website, and it'll open it in a new tab straight away. The other one that's very beautiful, like on here, and I'm just going to pop this up quite quickly here, if I press this close tab, so I'm just going to drag this across to here, and if I'm active in that one there and I press the close tab, it just closes the tab straight away. So, and if we just look at that close tab, all that is a hotkey called Control plus W. So Control plus W inside Firefox means close that tab. Now I don't have to remember Control plus W. All I have is a button which just says close tab, and that's dead easy. I can actually just hit on that and close it straight away. So it's backlit. You can put your own icon, so it's very good for WYSIWYGs and stuff like that. And and you can go down deep, so you can have several layers of keys that you want. Now there's 3 flavors of this, or there's a Stream Deck Mini which has 6 buttons. There's a Stream Deck MIDI one, or which is the one that I have here, which has 5 along the top and 3 down, so a total of 15 buttons. And then there's a Stream Deck XL which has about 8 or 9 buttons along the top, might have 10, and 4 down the side. So if you look at the cost of these, the small one costs about 125 New Zealand dollars, the middle one costs about $300, the top one costs 450. So the middle one is 2/3 the price of the top one, and the middle one's about 2/5. Now, if you just want to suck in and see, there is a Stream Deck mobile where you can download the app, and you need to sync your mobile phone with your PC, and then you can use it as a button. You've got a 30-day free trial, and then you can do a monthly subscription if you do that. I've never gone down that road because I tend to buy medium to cheap mobile phones, and so I have real problems syncing with my older computers. So it's just nothing. But if you've got a decent phone or something, it's worth just exploring to see whether it works. But if you're going to use that process in the long term, you'd actually want a second phone, because you'd need your phone for answering and doing stuff like that. I find this absolutely brilliant. But because I didn't try it out, I thought it's a big investment for a peripheral. So, something like a mouse, I can buy a gaming mouse for something like $16 New Zealand. This is $300, so it's something like 20 times the price. So you're suddenly thinking, am I getting the value out of that? Now, my plan was to actually get a second keyboard and actually put a whole load of macro keys on that specific for certain programs that I was actually going to go and develop. But just to do the setup, I actually had to do a mapping between the two keyboards. So if I pressed a Z on the second keyboard, it meant I had an address for it that was different than the Z on the first keyboard. And once I'm finding all of those addresses, I then actually had to match them to a hotkey of a program. So suddenly it ended up being quite a complicated process to go through just to set it up to actually do the tooling. And then I ended up having to either remember a whole lot of little other hotkeys that I needed, and then what programs they associated with, or else to put a whole lot of little stickers on each of the keys so that I could actually see what they associated with. So that was very complicated. So that's why I decided that I would actually take a punt and go and do the investment on the middle one, the Stream Deck there, and give it a crack. Now I've had it for about a couple of weeks now, and I love it. And all I've done is just the basics on there. And as soon as I started to do it, I suddenly thought, this is a fantastic tool just for your day-to-day tasks and things. And when I actually thought and started to reflect on it, if you think about what you do on a computer each day, now most people, initially you suddenly think, well, in the old days you'd actually have one or two programs that you'd work in mainly, and you do a couple of peripheral tasks. Now, like if I think about what I do, I might do a bit of BIM stuff or things like that. Might be some of the stuff I have an Excel open that I might be doing a schedule of stuff. I might be doing some costs. I might actually have a whole lot of websites or something that I actually want to link across with certain products and stuff. I'll be going onto my browser and doing a whole lot of shit with manufacturers and things like that, and with suppliers for certain products, etc., etc. I'll be using my Word documents to write letters, etc., etc., and to do specifications and things. I'll be doing my emails to actually chase up a whole lot of things. So you suddenly realize, and what I actually used to find quite a lot was I'd end up being really busy during the day, and at the end of the day I would have felt I hadn't actually achieved very much. I was busily switching between stuff. And so a lot of the productivity tools that I'm interested in doing, and this is why it's sort of hitting me, is I'm trying to reflect on, you end up being productive. So you end up doing more, you're getting paid the same amount of time. So suddenly you've got a whole load bigger workload. And it shouldn't be about that. It should actually be enjoying what you're doing, and enjoying the skills that you do of doing the bit. Like I love the drawing side of the things and doing the drawing, but I don't like a lot of the other noisy things that I've got to do on the side, like doing an email and sending somebody a link to the file, or sending the file as an attachment and all of that sort of thing. And so there's things like, one of the examples that I use is this. I'm going to click my wheel on my mouse. This brings up this program that I love. So this one here, I've got a subdirectory called screenshots. So if I take a screenshot of something and it just opens up, it opens up Explorer and takes me directly to that. Now, if I then navigate to another directory, which I use quite a lot. This one's got a very deep folder, so it's going for Windows C users, Drake, documents, projects, Zoe, issues here. So that's quite a long one to get to go and do. I've got another one that if I click on a file, if I right click, I've got copy path, and it copies the path and the file name, so I can actually, if I'm in emails, I've selected that file, and I can actually just go attach, and I can actually just put that paste that file whole address in, and it's almost done, clipped in very, very easily. So it takes a lot of the tedium of actually stepping up and down. Now you can actually just use your quick access toolbar, but again, I've got to scroll up to get to that or whatever, and a lot of the time it isn't where I need it to be. And I don't want another load of hotkeys and stuff that I actually need to go and get things. That, again, this is the problem that I'm actually finding. I've got so many hotkeys, I can't blooming remember them all. And the ones that I do remember, and that's the thing, you suddenly realise I've got these other little things can make it more productive, but I can't remember them. I don't use them because my mind's cluttered with that. So this brings me to another little topic, and I remember when I was first, I was a draftsman for a long time when I just do manual drafting or drafting by hand. And me and a friend, we'd done travelling and we worked in a few places around the world doing that. We came back, came to New Zealand, and he ended up doing CAD. And I said, well, what's the difference between CAD and drawing? And he said, well, you have this interference with CAD. If you're drawing a line, you don't think about it. You have this body memory and you just draw the line and you have this thing and you draw it from this point to this point. You just do it by eye and your mind. Your will does it but your body does what you want. And you've got your pencil in your hand type thing. He said, but if you're on a computer, you've got to say, I want to draw a line. And then you've got to say, oh, what's the command for that? So I've got to go type L, enter. And then you've got to move your mouse across from where, there, click, to there, click. So suddenly the computer's sort of getting in the way of what you want to do. It's like you want to write a letter. If you've just got a pen in your hand, you scribble a note down quite quickly. If you want to scribble a little note somewhere, you need a little notepad-y thing somewhere or to-do list or something that you've suddenly got to pop up. Oh, what's the hotkey for that? Or how do I access those sorts of things? So you're sort of the intuition of just being able to just scribble something else down. These other things step in the way of doing it. So I want to use the example of having breakfast. Like you can prepare your breakfast and then like a cooked breakfast or something like that, and then you eat your breakfast and you get the pleasure from that. Then at the end of that, you've actually got to wash your frying pan or whatever, or rinse your frying pan. You've got to rinse your plates and your knives and forks and your cutlery and etc. etc. You've then got to wash them up. You then got to dry them. You then got to put them all away. Or else you could just take all of that stuff, chuck it in the dishwasher and press the button on the dishwasher and go away. And then when it's all finished, you just go and stack the plate. You go and put everything back where it comes from. All of those steps are still done, but one of them is automated and one of them you've actually got to go through all of those steps. So as a chore goes, you're still doing the same chore, just there's an easier method of doing it and not. And that's where I see this Stream Deck working very well. It takes the chore out of what you're doing. So with the buttons, you can get a whole load of buttons doing here. Now, again, this is for gamers and it was for people who do live streaming, but also people who actually have quite complex programs, like they're doing video editing and stuff like that. So instead of actually having all these complex hotkeys or things like that they can go through, they can just have a button that does a certain action that's associated with a certain program. So you can have folders or you can have profiles that associate with a certain program. So when you open up that program, it opens up those keys. Now, it's not doing it here in OBS at the moment just because I'm right on the edge of my CPU with this. So if I come into here, it's not immediately going into my Firefox setup, although it should be, but it's not. And the same with if I suddenly switch to my email. It doesn't do that. But this is the thing. And the thing is, you can also do multi-steps on the keys through here. So one of the ones here that I use is that I'll check a couple of websites in the middle of the day. So just flicking into my browser and then just checking a couple of websites and then going back again, and one of the things, you can get a bit distracted by things. So one of the ideas that I started to explore is actually having different desktops. I'd have a desktop which had my email on and maybe my browser and other things like my social website or whatever. I don't have those. And then on the other one is the program that I'm in. So I've not bothered by emails popping up or coming in and notifications and stuff. I just work away on things. And then I actually take a break, go across into the other, toggle across to the other desktop that I actually have open, which actually has all my information. The other thing that you can do is you can do some text so that you can actually get a whole lot of text and you can paste it in. So if you've got a whole load of boilerplate stuff or people-specific emails, or suddenly you email a whole group of people and you haven't got them assigned to something, or a whole lot of other processes, you can actually have a text strings that you can put in there to actually attach to things. So you can actually use that for your email signature. You might have a full formal email signature, or a brief one, or a friendly one. Or you might want to initialize a program or a file. So every time you come in the morning, you can actually, and a lot of these, you can glue a lot of them together as well. And the way that you glue them together is there's things called multi-action. Now, if you get a multi-action and just drop it in there, what you can do is you can say, first of all, open up this program, and then maybe open up, so that might be open up my browser. Then you can say open up 3 websites because I just want to check them first thing in the morning, and then I'll actually have another button to do those sorts of things. Then open up, you can actually have a button so that when you first come in the morning, it opens up all of your programs so you're ready to go. So you don't have to think about that. Just one bang on that button and off it all goes. So that requires no programming. You don't actually have to learn macros or anything like that. It's just for anybody who generally uses them. So this is the thing where I see the beauty of this. And the thing is as well, once you've got a setup, you can suddenly say, actually, I prefer that one there because I use it a lot more frequently, so I do it up here. The other thing that I use quite a lot is down on my taskbar, which is hidden. If I go Windows 1, Windows plus 1 as a hotkey, it opens up the first program to the left of my taskbar. If I use the Windows plus 2 key, it opens up the second one. So the first one on my taskbar is my browser. So if I just go the Windows 1 button there, it's going to open up my browser. Oh no, I've got a question mark on there for some reason. Why is that? Because I haven't assigned a key to it. So what was that? That was Windows 1. So there we are. So now if I press that Windows 1, it opens up the browser. If I open up Windows 2, it's opening up my email because I've got that on the... So it just switches across. So I find when I'm multitasking or switching between 2 programs quite a lot, I actually just use the Windows 1, Windows 2, Windows 1, Windows 2, and just bounce between them. So I don't have to remember or particularly assign a button to a thing. I can actually just do a quick navigation through them all. And I can have Windows 3, Windows 4, Windows 5 type thing. So I find those sorts of buttons quite handy to do. Now, if you click on this little button up here, and this has only come on with the latest firmware that they've got, it's called the store, but there's plugins and there's icon libraries and there's sounds and there's some music that are all free things that you can download and use. A lot of the plugins are to do with live streaming or gaming and stuff like that, but there are ones like Zoom calls and things. So that on one of the things with the Zoom call is that there's a mute button, so that if you're suddenly going to sneeze in the middle of the mute button, you're in the middle of a Zoom conference that everybody's on, you can just mute your microphone straight away, and so it isn't going to affect anybody else. So that's quite handy. A lot of the plugins are for things like that, but there's also plugins, if we just come back, something like this one here that just it's giving you information, it's giving you the CPU usage. This one here's got an analog clock on here, and I've got a nice one down the bottom that I actually got, which is this one here called Stocks, which is a plugin through here. Just going to think about this for a minute. And what this one's doing is I've got a whole load of exchange rates that it's actually refreshing every hour, and this one's looking at specific stocks that it's doing from Yahoo. There you see it's refreshed. I've got on every hour. Now I've got them US to NZ and from NZ to US, just so that I see. So if I'm suddenly on a US site and I'm suddenly thinking Amazon or eBay or something like that, and it's got a price in US, I can actually quickly see what the price is in New Zealand dollars. The frustration that I was quite excited about this, I saw a video on how to do a calculator on your Stream Deck, and I did this so I thought that was a fantastic tutorial that I'll start learning how to do by doing all the hotkeys. So the plus button is just a shift plus equal button or whatever. and suddenly I realized when I was trying to set up this calculator, I didn't have enough buttons on mine. And the person who was doing the tutorial had the Steam Deck XL. So that's when I suddenly thought I would have preferred to have actually had that one, because it's a bigger deck and I would have been able to have more buttons on each one, because I intend to do a lot more ones to do with programs. Now, this one I absolutely love because I'm a southpaw lefty, and with the old number pads on the keyboards, I never used it because I'm not right-handed, I'm left-handed. And so I'd actually have to use the numbers at the top of the keyboard. And I've always found them a bit of an inconvenience, whereas this one's quite good. But I've got a whole load of other programs that I actually have got to start developing scripts and hotkeys for and stuff like that. And some of them might be macros because I want to do some multiple stuff and things. Now, another one that I just want to talk about is I'm just going to go into this microphone one through here. Now, this one does a speaker mute, or speaker brings the speaker back full on, or sound, and you've got sound you can actually increment down or increment up. Now, this is done on a profile. It's also got the toggle mute. If I touch that, there'll be a big red bar going through there, and it'll mute my microphone, but since I'm talking on, it won't be doing it. So I can actually have these buttons in all of the programs that I use it. So I'd end up using 3 buttons for that. So if I was doing that in my YouTube music folder, I'd need them in there. If I had them in my playlist folder that I was actually playing music off my files on my computer, or if I had them and I wanted one at the top of the home. So if I'm actually listening to audio music or something and my phone rings, I want to mute my button straight away. Now, if I just go to the home button, you see I've got that mic through there. Now, one of the things is if you suddenly end up, oh, sorry, I thought I hit that button, is that I might want to navigate. I don't want to just navigate back home, because if it was then to my my music one, I then have to go into my home to button, and then I'd actually have to go into my music one. So sometimes what you actually find is you'd end up having to use more navigation buttons to go back to other places where you're using a sort of a profile that you're using in a number of things. If this was just folder buttons and things like that, if you suddenly said I'm incrementing my sound up and sound down by 5% or 10%, and you change from 10% to 5%, every folder where you had that button in, you'd actually have to go through and change each icon separately, or the setup on the icon. Whereas if you've got a profile, you set it up once, and if you change it, it just changes on that one place. But you end up, the consequence of that is you end up having to do a lot more navigation buttons to get back to places where you've got it set up and used from. So just be aware of that. There are pluses and minuses depending on how you set those up. The other interesting thing with this is that you can actually, if I go right-hand click, you can back up all of those. So this is one of the things that I would be suggesting for people, if you're interested in this in an office situation of suddenly thinking this might be something that'll be handy for everybody. You could go and purchase amongst 3 or 4 of you a Stream Deck Mini, and somebody said, well, I'm going to use it for a week and just try it out and see if these things actually work very well for me. And then that person can save their own profiles onto the desktop, and then they can restore the profiles again. And then they can give it to somebody else, and then they can try and use it. And some people it might work for, and they suddenly thinking, no, this is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go and invest in one of these, or I'm going to get the company to invest in one of these for me, because they're such a useful tool and they make me so much more productive with work things. So a lot of the stuff that you're doing, it actually saves a lot of the grind of suddenly I don't have to come up into the if I'm in the web page to suddenly saying, oh, I want to go to this website, oh, I've got to come down and pull that up, I've got to go and do this and go and do that. Now, this is just a little demo of something that I'm actually exploring at the moment inside of my email setup. So I'm just going to go to my email setup here. Now, if I'm in here, if I just press my new email button there, I'm in here, and it will just open up a new email right away. Now, I'm just going to put my address into there. Now, this is something that I've been wondering about. Inside, we normally put our signature in. So I've got a signature here on a hotkey called Control+1. That's a general one. Oh, sorry, that's a friendly one. Then I've got control 1, 2, 3 on the one number, and that will actually give me a more formal one. And then I can control 1, 2, 3, 4, and it should give me something with a telephone number and all the rest of the things. And then I've got one which just me a full-blown HTML one that's very fancy, but I've got to be in this HTML tab to actually get that one working. But we have signatures in the body of the text. But I suddenly thought, well, can we actually have a sort of signature in the subject line? So the tree is pink. So here's a subject line. So this is something that I've been exploring. So I'm going to press this button called Subject All. So if I put my cursor at the end of the subject line and press that button there, it puts a little fleur-de-lis emoji at the beginning and end, and then tabs down ready that I can actually start typing stuff into my email straight away to do that. So if I send that now, if I now send that off to somebody in their inbox, your subject line header will always have those little things in there, so it'll stand out. So people will say, oh, I know who that's from. Because I never ever look at who the correspondent is. I actually just look at, we've got to go into that one there. And you'll see that comes up the way. And you see, even if you select it, it still stands up, so they can find your signature ones quite easy. So I find this is something that I'm starting to use. And another one that I use is to, if I find a website that I use, I can email it to myself, and I just put these ones in there, knowing that they're from me, and I need to action that website by checking on it or doing a bit more research on something like that. And it stands out compared to other emails that don't have anything at all. So that's just something that I'm thinking of. So that's a little button that I'm doing. Now that is a little auto hotkey script that I'm using. But you could do something like at the beginning of that, you could actually just have a little text box, a little text key, and inside that put a couple of little emojis. So if I just go, sorry, I need to, if I'm in there, I don't know if I can select that, copy. You can actually just have a little emoji in there. And so if I was actually going to start an email address or something like that and start a new one, so I'm just going to go new email there. So am I in that one? There we come. So if I'm in here, I can press that little text thing and the emoji comes in there straight away. So I might suddenly say, this is from me, and then put the multi-line subject into there and do it. So you don't necessarily need to be doing your scripting to be able to do those. You can actually do handy little things to just make it more bespoke. The other nice thing with this is you have a configuration. It doesn't quite work. You're suddenly thinking, no, I actually want that button there and that button there because I use that, or actually, no, I use that less. So I want those ones and that sort of stuff because I'm always new email and send, and then sometimes I use this subject line ones and sometimes I do, or I want to put these emojis. And on that one, I can most probably get make a screenshot, go and find, zoom in on that emoji, take a screenshot of that, and then put it as a background image so I know what it's actually doing, or maybe it's 3 or something like that. So they're just simple little things that actually just make you know what you're doing. You're styling, you're putting your own styles, and you ended up with your own interface of tools that you need in specific programs. So I just think it's a wonderful thing. And as I said, I regret not getting the big one. But for me, for doing research and being able to experiment on something like that, and I suddenly think, oh, that's a good idea, but not quite. I'll just delete that and go and do something else, or try another method to do something. That's something that you know you can do with these limited ones. Now, there again, the plugins, there are a few through there. I've only tried 3 or 4 of them that I've loaded up and actually played with, because at the moment I'm actually just playing with simple buttons to see whether it's worth using just on a general thing. Say if you're just not using specialist programs like doing very specialized video editing. Now, one of the things that I do use that I haven't been able to get to work in there, so I can do a web page, but I can't do a Bookmarklet. Now, this is a Bookmarklet that this is one of many that I've got. So I'm actually going to look up stream on this website, and what it's going to do is it's going to find wherever it finds stream, it's going to highlight that. And so a Bookmarklet is just a bit of JavaScript that it runs over a web page. So it loads your web page up, and then it runs another bit of script over the top of it, and it does things like this one just said, go and find that word and highlight it. And if you just refresh the page, all of that disappears. But I find something like that's really good is that I'm reading a long article and I want to find a particular word or topic on it. Another thing that I use this for is if I actually select a bit of text, so I highlight a text, I've got one that it will go and look it up on DuckDuckGo, or I can get it to look up on Wikipedia or things, or if it's an address, it'll open up my web page, it'll open up Google Maps and actually show that address on there. And then I've got one if I'm on something and there's a bit of Latin or a bit of foreign different language or something like that, I can use the Google Translate that I've got set to default of figure out what language it is and translate it to English. So it just pops up and does that for me. So a lot of those are just simple buttons for convenience and things like that. Now, I haven't been able to get those, which brings me to another point on this. A lot of the forums that I've found to do with the Stream Deck might be to do with a specific game or with video editing with a certain program, and then they discuss some of the things that they can do in there. So I haven't found any that are just sort of general forums. The forums to do with the Stream Deck tend to be for a specific case, specific games, a specific live streaming, maybe with OBS or something like that. So I haven't been able to find something of how I can actually get these to work just with the Stream Deck. Now, I might be able to actually, they've got the SDK on here so that you can actually, most probably if you're a coder, be able to write things to start yourself to actually do that. Or maybe I can use auto hotkey to actually find a way to use it if it's important that I need to do it. As it is, this is convenient on the thing. So what I find this does for you is it eases things. It gets you into the position where you're in the program and you've got buttons that you're actually using. You don't have to remember specific hotkeys, and this is one of the things as well. In my emails, a new email is Control+N, and then most probably Control+P in there would be print if I needed to print it or if I wanted to move it to archives. So I can do multi-step functions on things where I suddenly think, actually, those emails are coming in there, but I want to go and archive them. So I can select certain emails and just press a button and just say archive them to a certain directory or something where I actually want to keep those ones or something. So it starts easing just all the little things that you need to make this stuff up. So for me, it's definitely easing a lot of the stuff. Now I want to do some quite sophisticated things. The other thing is most programs now tend to have their own hotkeys. Like you can actually, if you're in Word, you can actually just highlight a bit of text and just say, make that header 1, or make it, paragraph, or make it normal, or make it of a certain other one that you want to change the style of the text fonts or something like that, or you want to indent it in, or you actually want to do a index on the thing or something like that. And inside Excel, you can actually have something like control arrow down. So if you're in the first cell and you've got 500 rows, control down takes you to the last cell, active cell on that list down there, unless there's a gap of a blank or something. So you can suddenly do a whole load of navigation things, or you can do a whole load of functions and stuff like that. So with each of the programs, now some programs allow you to remap certain hotkeys so you can assign certain things. But also, if you have that program open, if you like the F1 key, if you're in a browser, if I press my F1 key, it's going to bring up help, and that help is associated with the Firefox. If I'm in, Word, and I press F1, that will bring up help associated with Word. So a lot of the hotkeys, you might end up with exactly the same hotkey, might be Control-W or Control-P for print or whatever, that is associated with particular things all the time. So The other thing that I find quite here is, like I'll use something like calculate, but I don't use it that frequently. And then I suddenly have to think, oh, how do I do that? I've got to go down and start, type calc, go and find when the program pops up, go and click on the program and things, because I don't pull it down onto my taskbar because I don't use it that frequently. But I can actually just have a hotkey somewhere, bang, and it's just got the image of the calculator and pull it up. I have been in the past actually used Excel rather than using calculator, but I find with my CPU struggling as it is at this point in time, I think I'd rather lean towards using something like calculator now. So on my, it's on my second home screen there, and I've got calculator just sitting down in the corner of the program. And I should put a nice image. Like initially I've just got bland images at the back, because if I don't use these that frequently, then there's no point in setting it up for things. If I do, then I'll actually start making them so that they're visually very easy to start navigating through. So mine is first of all set up, see if it works. If it doesn't, put it down further down the things, and then start developing things further and further. So I think once you actually get one of these, you'll end up with a certain interface that works for you, but it also allows you to quickly try out new things. The other thing as well is that it'll actually extend your knowledge of some of the programs, of actually having hotkeys associated with those, because of the fact that you don't have to remember the new hotkey. All you have is a button that just says select text and indent, boom. Now, one of the areas I'm quite interested in doing is that I do blogging, WordPress blogging, so that I can end up with a whole lot of shortcuts for blocks and things like that to quickly get the block that I want set up, so that it's an embedded video from YouTube, or it's a list, or it's a thing that I can quickly get and navigate around to actually write and set up new posts that I actually want to start writing with. So, it's really, what you do is the actual interaction of typing the email and stuff like that, but getting and going and getting the attachment can be really quite tedious. When you hit the attach button, it then pops up and it has you in kind of C, and you've got to go and drill down to where the program is. I find something like this speeds up hunting for files straight away. So that's quick access toolbar, quick access QAP. Quick access pop-up, and that's on the mouse button, and it takes that chores. You're doing chores as part of the day, but you don't have to spend all of your time doing the chores. You can speed up that, so you can do all the big washing up, or else you can just use the dishwasher. And the dishwasher is, you just put it in and you press a button and you walk away. And this is just pressing a button. I've got one button that gets me to where I need to do or something, or I want to go and open a page, wherever my mouse is at this point in time. I can actually just go onto my page for for web pages. I can be anywhere, and then if I hit one of these, it'll open it up straight away. Boom. So easy peasy. And again, you can suddenly saying, in the middle of the day, I actually check all my news. So you can actually open up 5. You can actually have a multitask through here, pull down a multi-action, and all you do is just say, open up this page, open up this page, open up this page, open up this page. So it opens up 4 web pages straight away, and then you can actually have a closed tab, a multitask, which is closed tab, and it closes tabs 4 times. So if you're in the last tab, it'll just close that tab and go, and when you go to the next one, it'll close that tab and close that tab. I think sometimes you might need to have a delay between some of the actions. I haven't tried many of the multitasks. I've just been doing the simple stuff. And what I found is, without learning all the hotkeys or learning macros and things like this, this has sufficient in it that me personally, I think you would feel as if you got your money's worth after a month, if you've got the middle streaming one. And then if you're into full-blown doing some serious stuff on some computer, you add some quite complex and lots of functions and things. You're like in my BIM or in my CAD thing, I might have line, or I might change orthogonal, So it's fixed in the XY coordinates rather than anywhere, and then polylines and all sorts of things. So suddenly you don't have to remember a whole lot of things. You can just have some graphics for those buttons to quickly dive between them to actually speed up. And again, that's one of the things. But I prefer. And I think this is something to do with drawing and with stuff, is that if I'm drawing a detail and I'm in the middle of the screen, I don't want to come up here, click on something and look down for the particular program to come down to the rim world to find out the specific thing that I want. And I like to keep my mouse there, so I actually find buttons and hotkeys are the way that I need to do it. I get distracted and forget what I'm in the middle of when I actually move my cursor away. So the people who actually use the pull downs on the ribbons, I find a lot less productive than the people who actually are using the hotkeys and stuff like that. But then you end up having to remember a whole lot of hotkeys or a whole lot of mnemonics for what you do. Whereas if you just got a graphic button, you don't need to do that, but they're there in the interface. So that's where I regret now of not actually trying out the flavor of it on somebody else. But again, I didn't know anybody else who actually had one of these. But if I would have this, I would go to the large ones next time to do it. And I might be interested later on in actually seeing if I can do a simple plugin for maybe something it didn't do, and maybe I've got to look at exploring something like a plugin to be able to do bookmarklets, which may be the case. But I would say at the very least try the Stream Deck mobile, and if there's a group of you in the office, maybe all gather together, try the cheaper one like that. It isn't a big investment, but just to see if it works. But the responsiveness that you actually get from these and is just convenient. And from my point of view, where I was going to map a second keyboard to actually experiment with a whole lot of little keys, this is a really, really good tool, because I can do a whole lot of testing on a whole lot of different keys, and I can actually have the same macro set up in different ways. So maybe I bring my mouse up here and then I do something, or I start trying to do remembering an awful lot more of the keys. So what I'm actually going to have a problem with now is the fact that I'm going to have so many subfolders, because I'm going to have so many hotkeys associated with specific programs and stuff. And then I'll then be in the dilemma of actually having to go hunting to see where I'd actually assign those, and whether I actually end up with being able to switch a profile so that I actually have priority ones depending on what I'm doing. An example of that is something like Excel, where a whole lot of you might need buttons like Control Arrow Down, which will take you to the end of the row, and then you actually have a whole lot more to do with the different functions. Like I use the concatenate function quite a lot, or split or concatenate. Those sorts of buttons I use quite frequently, and also there's a few other ones, though, VLOOKUP and stuff like that. Is that they're buttons that you do use, that you can actually quickly have action buttons for, that you can select and do and explore. So I'm loving this, and I actually really would, if you're just doing basic tasks, you're an admin assistant, or you're just doing basic work and things like that, I think this just makes your life a little bit easier. It just takes that wearing stuff of doing things, and it makes it easier to do what you actually focus on. So at the end of the day, you feel as if you focused on the productive stuff rather than the getting from and to and jumping between programs, etc., and just trying to get to the bits that you need. It sets up the environment so that you can actually work in that environment. And then you move into another environment, and it sets up that environment that you want. I want to do emails. This is the environment that I need for that. This is the environment that I need to be in my browser. I want to do some research stuff in the browser, or I've got to log into these certain areas of things to start doing specific tasks in certain things over the intranet. You have all of those that drops you into. You don't actually have to mind it. And you can actually just have one as soon as you walk away from your desktop, that you just lock your screen. Or as you have one that you have one button that you come in the morning, you turn on your computer, you log yourself in, this becomes active, and you press one button, it opens up all the programs that you'd have for your normal work day, so that they're all ready to go for you. And you can even have it opens. I've got to see if there's something where it will open the last file that you actually had open, like Word. It gives you a list of the recent files that you've done, whether it could actually open that up, and the same in Excel or something, so that you've actually got your environment set up, and you go and have a cup of coffee. So just that sort of tedium things that you do. Now because I actually do a lot of experimentation with auto hotkey scripts, I've got a whole lot of auto hotkey scripts through here, some that I'm using all the time, some that I use a little bit infrequently. If I just type the caps button, I've got this one here where I've got a whole lot of scripts that I may or may not use, but I can start bringing them onto buttons so that I've got them and use them with a lot more frequency. Sorry, I'm going to hit on that and hit the escape, and then it goes away again. So these ones here, I can test them. If they don't work, then I drag them away. If I find that I've found a new productivity tool, I've got one that does timesheets for me, I've got one that does notes, I've just found another to-do one, I've got this one which is templates, where you can snatch some text. You can make a template calling it, from web rewind or something like that. You hit a hotkey and it has a list of all of those little templates that you've actually got that you can just paste into a document straight away, document or an email or whatever else you're doing where you're switching between stuff. Now that may be an absolute brilliant one for if I'm actually in a CAD program or something and I've got generalized notes that I'm using all the time, that I can slam them in, so I can end up with a whole lot of different folders with a whole lot of different lists of standard notes and things that I can actually just bash in somewhere, because I find typing a lot of things in some of those programs can be quite tedious. But these are all just other semi-productivity things that I can do, but I can assign them to a button so that they're easily accessible and they fire up dead easily. So I hope that's been of interest to you. Again, I feel guilty about saying here's a productivity tool, but you've got to go and pay lots of money for it. And it's one of those things, I'm starting to use a gaming mouse. And one of the nice things about a gaming mouse, and this is actually tethered, is when I start the computer, I end up with, putting your password before you go, or your PIN or whatever, is that I can assign a button to my PIN to get in. So I don't actually have to type in my PIN or my password all the time. It already remembers. Now, it doesn't do it on the Stream Deck because that only activates after you're actually in the other one, inside, once you're actually inside the Windows environment straight away. But I find that, so the mouse button or extra keys from a gaming mouse button actually have their usage. And again, but I'm finding it really hard to get used to a gaming mouse. I've actually had a normal mouse for 20 years, and so these extra buttons, I'm finding it's really hard to get into the habit of using the one, because I've never done it, so I've sort of got no body memory of doing that. But I actually find using the Stream Deck is so natural to use. But the other little proviso, the two provisos that I want to put on that, the first one is I'm a lefty. So I actually find the Stream Deck works, it sits just directly by my left hand straight away. But what I've noticed for some of the people who are using got big gaming stuff or things, they've got the screens, the desktop screens. So I work on a laptop, so it sits to the left just quite fine. But for people who are gaming, what they have a normal keyboard, and then this thing just sits up. Because it's on a stand that has it as an angle directly behind their key, so they can just reach across the keyboard, touch the ones that they want. So most probably they can use the right hand or left hand or whatever they use of their preference. But I find this a very natural thing to do, and I also find that its use is reasonably intuitive. I have been a little bit confused with how do I make a certain button work or do something, but what I do with that is, because I use all the hotkey scripts, I was suddenly thinking, I can't solve that there, so I just do a little macro myself. But there may be other ways of doing it. So there may be plugins there that actually solve that problem. But again, that was an issue that I had with the forums, is I haven't found a particularly good forum yet that actually does those things. So my recommendation is, try the mobile app, give it a crack, because I find it's such an easy way, and it actually declutters my mind in that I don't have to remember all of the hotkeys now. There may be some that I might keep anyway, just because they've been on my keyboard for so long, like the fact that I've got a hotkey for my email addresses so that I can just put them into the address bar or whatever, or send them straight away. Or sometimes I might use them in for a logging in of something or other. That I've got them on hotkeys, and I think I'll leave them there just because they've always been there, and my body memory says that. But I'm starting to use an awful lot more hotkeys, and I'm struggling with remembering what those ones are, because I'm getting extra programs or writing extra keys that do extra things, but it's too much. I can't remember them, and so they get pushed to the side, and I only recollect the earlier ones. So this allows you to not bother doing that. So it actually takes a lot of strain off me. But there's somebody who uses a lot of hotkeys anyway. You may be somebody who actually prefers to come up and do a pull down to actually find what you actually want, and that's the rate of your speed. As I said, this is my preference in the way that I do it, and I've just got myself another NAS with some extra areas, so I've got extra drives and extra places for files, and I suddenly realised I can actually select a whole lot of files and just copy them, and just have a button that will actually just copy them across, so that I can use that as a generalised backup, because I don't like a full-on backup. Because I find it sometimes locks up my computer just when I want to do some intensive work. So thank you very much for watching that. If you found it useful, you give a thumbs up. If you don't, Op Pan Yaha, which is Cambodian for whatever. Thank you very much for watching.